India's first Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, died in a helicopter crash on the 8th of December 2021. Now, the latest report of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defence says the crash was because of human error. Now, the Mi-17 V5, in which General Bipin Rawat and his staff were on board, flew into the clouds and hit the hillside barely 7 minutes before it was scheduled to land in Wellington, Tamil Nadu. 13 other persons, including the pilots of the aircraft and General Rawat's wife, staff and protection detail, died in the crash. So what are the lessons that one can get out of this report? And how did General Bipin Rawat's aircraft, this helicopter, this Mi-17 crash, what are the lessons from it? Joining me to discuss this are two ace helicopter pilots, Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur and Air Commodore Ashutosh Lal. And in the studio, I have with me my colleague Deepak Badana. Gentlemen, welcome to the News 9 Plus show. AVM Bahadur, absolutely heartbreaking, the statistics that we just saw of the crashes of the Air Force between 2017 and 2021. 34 crashes, of course, the most important, the most significant of these crashes is the crash in December 8th, 2021, where the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, and his staff perished. Tell us, as an experienced helicopter pilot, what goes into the Air Force when you experience a crash like this? What is the procedure that kicks in when you investigate the exact reasons behind a crash of this nature?
Thank you, Sandeep, for getting me on your show to discuss something which is very important and which grabbed the headlines because of the passengers that Mi-17 carried.
Right.
Any accident is bad.
Yes.
And if there are fatalities, it's worse. In this case, we lost the CDS, his wife, and his entourage, the aircrew, and the other people traveling. Now, when an accident happens, the first thing that the Air Force does is to set in motion a chain of events to recover people, to save lives. That's the first thing that the Air Force does.
Right.
So rescue helicopters are sent.
Yes.
The civil administration is contacted for finding out where exactly the aircraft has crashed, and relief parties sent it. So this is what happens from this retrieval point of view. Side by side, what happens is that the documents of the aircraft in question are sealed.
Right.
So that the history of the aircraft is preserved for the court of inquiry that invariably follows. If the accident is a fatal accident, then a minimum of the presiding officer's rank has to be a group captain and above.
Right.
In this case, the presiding officer was an air marshal, the CNC, the commander-in-chief of the training command, an experienced helicopter pilot. And an experienced team is given to the presiding officer that includes technical members, medical members, and others, anybody who would help solve the puzzle. So this is what happens when an accident occurs and the chain of events are set into motion.
Right, a chain of events set into motion, and in this case, in this particular crash, this very unfortunate crash which killed the CDS and his staff, Air Marshal Bahadur, human error is being attributed to the cause of this crash, and this also emerged from the Air Force's report submitted shortly after the crash in 2022, from what we gather. Tell us how you would arrive at a conclusion like this, and what does this really mean in light of this particular crash?
In an accident of the nature that we are talking of, where there were no survivors on board the helicopter, the court of inquiry is in for a very tough task, because they wouldn't get the first-hand account of what transpired. So the court of inquiry moves to the accident site and gathers evidence the material evidence which is there available from the wreckage, plus any eyewitnesses around, civilians, military, uniformed, whoever, villagers, whoever are there, who have seen the helicopter or may have even just heard
Right.
the noise of the helicopter. So the court of inquiry then proceeds and tries to look for all these evidence,
Yes.
plus searches for the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder.
Right.
Now these are vital, and in this case, I understand both were retrieved and were milked in a good way.
Yeah.
The information available with them was there. So that helped the court of inquiry team arrive at its conclusion. Now you're talking of the human error, aircrew. The aircrew are not there to give their evidence.
Right.
So just remember, though the report presented to the parliament says it's a human error, aircrew,
Yes.
this is a deduction of the
Right.
court of inquiry, because you cannot blame somebody who's not there to protect himself or herself.
Yes. Right.
So this has to be kept in mind, and it's the deduction of the court of inquiry members where they think that this is the most probable reason of the accident.
Right. This is the most probable reason of the accident. Human error, spatial disorientation is what we're being told. And Air Commodore Ashutosh Lal joins us all the way from Vienna. He's a former helicopter pilot from the Indian Air Force. He's flown over 8,000 hours in various machines, including the Mi-17. Air Commodore Lal, this report that's been just tabled in Parliament mentions human error as the cause of the crash which killed the CDS and several other officers and his staff detail. What's your reaction to this, given the fact that we already knew since 2022 that human error was to blame, but to have this now in a document presented in Parliament, what are the lessons for us really from this very unfortunate crash in 2021?
Sunny, thank you very much for having me over on this. And I see my senior Bahadur sir is already there, and I heard him. In fact, we all agree. We, as a larger community from the armed forces who have flown extensively, we carry it in our hearts. We've flown together in the glacier and many places. Many adages have gone through us, and we've been being the watchdog of the human error accident.
Right.
Let me make the first point. We've been part of the training in the Air Force.
Yes.
We've carried it in our own hearts. Now that I fly in the civil and I see how it is being trained over there and what we are doing, all the qualifications that the Air Force gave us, all the responsibility that we have to live, let me start with an admission. Now that I look back
Yes.
at the training processes, as I see it now in the civil using simulators and scenario-based training and so on and so forth, and whatnot, virtual reality is like the next door actually. Let's start with an admission.
Right.
Because countries have changed their courses because of CFIT helicopter accidents.
Right.
You remember Iran president some time
Yes.
back?
Yes.
Remember Kobe Bryant
Yes.
in the
Just
US
last year. Yes.
with his 13-year-old daughter?
Right.
CFIT, right? In some other small way.
Right.
Closer home, YSR Reddy.
Yes.
Though there was an emergency on board that helicopter, but the helicopter went down because of the terrain and whatever. There are key words like situational awareness,
Yes.
crew resource management, which we teach. It's the process that we teach. So it's a constantly process which has to be updated, which
Right.
needs to be updated.
There's a
So, like Sir said, we are not here to judge anyone. People are
Right.
not here to defend themselves. Most likely deducted cause. Understood. If you recall, there was a marriage party which was walking down the track.
right.
There was a videographer on the track, and he took a last few seconds video of the helicopter, which emerged out of clouds, re-entered the clouds, and hit
Yes.
that. Sir is here in front of us, and he will abide by me.
Yes.
When we were taught by them only that helicopter, mountains, small problem.
Right.
Helicopters, mountain, weather, bigger problem.
Right.
And helicopter, mountain, weather, less fuel. What we did in Glacier, and Sir has commanded that unit that we
Yes.
flew in earlier. Biggest problem.
My colleague Deepak Badana is here in the studio with me, and he has actually a question for Air Marshal Bahadur. Deepak?
Sir, out of the, around 34 crashes have happened between 2017 and now, and 19 of those have been attributed to human error. Why is that? That seems to be an astoundingly high percentage.
Right, and quickly to add on to that, Air Marshal Bahadur, the fact that, taking on from where Air Commodore Lal said that there is possibly a need to revise some of the training methods in the light of, more recent incidents. You see this as one of the areas that the government, indeed the Air Force, should be looking at very closely, given the very high number of human error incidents that have happened in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I had a look at that chart which is there, and 19 out of 34, more than 50% human error aircrew is a high figure, very high figure. But there is also a sub chart which shows that 2017-18 it is some 3 or 4, and then next one goes up to 9, I think, and then next 3 years it drops down a little. But even 1 is 1 too many. Let's face facts.
Yes.
So no excuses for that. The issue is, yes, we have to look at the number of aircraft type-wise also, and the amount of flying that each type does.
Right.
Plus, the vintage will give you an idea whether we have simulators.
Right.
Air Commodore Lal is now flying in the civil streets, civil aviation, as he says.
Yes.
As he has just said. And it's a fact that the amount of simulator training done in the civil side is good and high.
Right.
And the scenarios that they are put in, do we have in our services at present the same amount of simulator training that is available in the civil streets? I don't think so. But the modern aircraft which are coming, I do know, for example, the ALH has got a very modern simulator.
Right.
The V5 simulator has taken years to be set up, but I understand that it's functioning now.
Right.
I left the service 11 years back, so I really don't know whether the two which we bought and set up at Sarsawa and Bagdogra, whether they are operational. I think one of them is.
Right. So,
and if I just digress a bit, the C-17, the C-130, wonderful modern simulators are there.
yes.
So when you're talking of the full accident profile, which it was just spoken about, the number of fighter accidents are also there.
Yes.
There we come into an issue of the type and quality of simulators, the vintage of the simulators that are available. That needs to improve. And I think the Air Force, it requires money.
Yes.
Large amount of money. I'm sure the Air Force is pushing it.
Absolutely. In fact, very important point there, Air Marshal Bahadur, the fact that we need simulators and the Mi-17, as you correctly pointed out, Deepak, is a very, very important aircraft, not just because it's literally the workhorse of the Air Force and the Army. It is the aircraft that flies all across the country, but it also flies all of India's VVIPs, from the President to the Prime Minister to the Defence Minister, and the entire military brass are flown by the VVIPs. The Mi-17 V5s of the kind that crashed. So it is of great importance for the Air Force and of course for the Defence Ministry to figure out what to do in this case. And Air Marshal Bahadur has just mentioned that simulators are one reason. And I'm going to ask Air Commodore Ashutosh Lal also this, the fact that simulators, possibly you need more simulators to train our Mi-17 pilots, Air Commodore Lal, given the responsibility that
thank you very much for
of passengers
question,
that they
actually.
yes.
So let me put this in perspective. First of all, let me tell you what all good things are already happening
Right.
for past 3 to 4 years. Sir mentioned in passing, the ALH simulator is in Bangalore. It's a place called Hats Off,
Yes.
an academy called Hats Off, helicopter training Hats Off. There is a team of very dedicated ex-Air Force, Army, Navy pilots over there who are doing yeoman service to our helicopter community, who are training people from young blood which is being drawn into ALH now, boys and girls who are flying it there. They are all going there and they're going through this process, and it's a protocol of VFR flying, that is visual reference flying, transiting to instrument flying, when it becomes dark and the clouds come
Yes.
in, you're not able to get to see outside. How do you say something called an inadvertent IMC,
Yes.
in which you are just about getting IMC and then coming back to VFR? What is the protocol between the 2 crew, the 3 crew? What kind of a call-outs are there? What
Right.
kind of procedures are there? So that at all times you have your situational awareness about yourself.
Yes.
Now this group of instructors and the instructors over there, and hats off, are doing a great job.
Right.
Is it possible for us to have generic simulators and understand this protocol, even if the simulator is coming late, like was pointed out for V5?
Yes.
Let me
Yes.
clarify. Both the simulators in Sarsawa as well as Bagdora are functional.
Right.
They have a set of dedicated instructors and it is being flown.
Right.
V5, as you know, inherently has a limitation. It only has downward visibility
Right.
about terrain. That means a radio altimeter. It does not have EGPWS, Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System. That means it doesn't look ahead. It doesn't give you a warning on terrain coming ahead. So the
Right.
protocol is slightly different. To be able to see what is the minimum safety altitude
Yes.
and to descend or not to descend, to take calls or to turn which side. There are applications available on your pads, iPads and your,
Yes.
your thin tanks, which you can carry in the cockpit, which is certified. But let me caution, all these fixes are not going to work because it needs a systematic approach to the whole thing.
Right.
Step
Absolutely.
back. Right from the beginning, I mentioned the US Army has translated to now virtual reality training.
Right.
So helicopter pilots who are just being inducted, they are brought into this protocol.
Yes.
They are brought into the system wherein they would keep losing. You know, like sand in your fist.
Yes.
When you hold the sand fist very hard, the sand slips out. This
Right.
is situational awareness, always slipping out.
Absolutely.
And you need CRM to always keep regaining it,
Right.
so that you can make your airborne decision matrix in a very, very safe manner.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ekumdo
Otherwise,
Lal.
what I mentioned-
Yes. I'm
Otherwise,
afraid
what
we're
I-
completely out of time here, but thank you so much for joining us, AVM Bahadur and Ekumdo Lal, two of India's most experienced helicopter pilots. You heard it from there, the lessons that the IF could implement from the 2021 crash of the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat. Lots of lessons there, a lot of them are already being implemented. There are several other lessons that the Air Force could possibly look at, given the experience of the two gentlemen who've just been on our show to explain to us that military flying is challenging, especially when it's in adverse terrain, the kind of conditions, and of course the special military machines that fly our brave soldiers in combat. Of course, they need the best, and this is something that, of course, the services are looking forward to. But that is the crash that killed the Chief of Defence Staff, and that is the crash that possibly altered India's military history as well. But there's a lot that needs to be done to make sure that not one Indian Air Force aircraft goes down in a crash of this nature.